Welcome to the GeoOwl Podcast.
The new era of intelligence.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of GeoOwl Podcast, where we host engaging conversations designed to advance the effectiveness of intelligence operations through technology, innovation, and application. We are coming to you live from Signal Fire Studios in Wilmington, North Carolina, with our host, Nick Smith, the founder and CEO of GeoOwl. Nick, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Great to be back here in the studio talking about some fun stuff.
Very fun stuff. I have to be honest. So we've been doing this only for about a year, and we've had a litany of like different clients and different industries that we've been working with. I have to tell you, sitting in my seat, looking into the control room where Josh, one of our engineers, sits, the topic of conversation that we've been having over the last few weeks it's unprecedented with our team. I mean, the stuff that we're talking about, everybody's getting stoked like, dude, this is like spooky spy. Like it's kind of spy. It's kind of like CIA secret, snooping and pooping. And I've been loving the conversation.
GeoOwl does cool shit. We
100%.
do cool shit. That's what we do. And it's fun to talk about. That's awesome. I'm glad I could step up the game here at Signal Fire Studios.
Definitely. So how have you been? It's been a week.
I've been great. Had a good week at work. Lots happening right now in the community. Especially in the intelligence industry. So I'm busy as ever, and it's great to be back.
Heck yeah. So, but you got a lot of stuff going on outside of GeoOwl. I mean, you're getting married soon, right?
I am getting married.
So give us a grand scheme of maneuvers. Like,
grand scheme maneuvers.
I want to know, like, do you guys have a venue picked out? You guys going on a honeymoon? What's the reception going to look like? Is our team invited? No, I'm just kidding. No, but really,
everyone's invited from Signal Fire. So we're getting married, and we picked out. My fiance's picked out a fantastic venue for the ceremony. It's actually at what's called the Grove at the Fort Fisher Historic Site.
Now, is that the grassy area right near the little museum building?
Yeah, like out back, there's a lot of cool trees. And it's right along the Cape Fear River there. So that's where we're holding the ceremony at, and then we're actually going to hold the reception at the Fort Fisher Aquarium. Hopefully, COVID is not a factor by then. But she just did a great job in selecting the venue. And,
so you literally have the entire aquarium for your
aquarium,
wedding party?
Sharks and all.
Is there diving involved?
I will not be diving. There may be a diver, though. I don't plan on jumping in, but I may have some jellyfish attire on, so I'll be good. The lining of my suit is actually a bunch of jellyfish. So
seriously?
Yeah, why not? Why not go corny like that, right? If you're holding it at an aquarium, might as well just go with it.
Right.
But yeah, we're really looking forward to that, and it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Do you guys have are you going on a honeymoon or?
Yeah, we plan on going to French Polynesia, Bora Bora, or somewhere in there. So somewhere tropical, somewhere hot, somewhere.
Struggle's real, apparently.
With not too many people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You want to know where so I've been married for 17 years, and our honeymoon, I was in between stints in the Marine Corps when we got married, so I was actually a civilian, but we got married, and our honeymoon was a 4-day cruise on Carnival, and we went to Key West and I can't even remember, like the Bahamas or something. It was by far the lowest cost tropical vacation.
Pretty good to me.
I can't complain. It was awesome. Mind you, it was a Bora Bora. I've never been there, but the answer is no. It was not Bora Bora. So, I mean, good on you for being able to. I mean, that's literally a bucket list destination for me.
Yeah, well, me too, and I'm actually going to do it. So we'll chat again afterwards. I can tell you all about it.
Yeah, but you're in your 30s. I mean, I might not wind up if I even go there. I could be 70 years old if I'm still alive at that point. But Good for you, man. That
well,
sounds
we just
like
need Signal Fire to just blow up and then pay for your vacation.
that's all part of the goal.
Rob, Chase, they're listening.
Yeah, exactly.
They know. They need to pay for this stuff.
And that definitely lies at the vision of where we want to go. But you with GeoOwl steering.
Signal Fire live from Bora Bora, 2023.
I think we should put on a music.
I think the whole crew is ready. I think we should do it.
I would like to put on a music festival, like almost like a Coachella. Not a fire, not a fire festival, because
that might be a problem.
Yeah,
yeah.
A lot of people. Yeah, we'll avoid the fire festival talk. How are things been going at GeoOwl?
GeoOwl's doing great. Obviously, there's a lot happening in the world right now, and we've had a lot of success recently with our software. A lot of success with winning new contracts and new work. More and more customers depending on us for their intelligence needs, and I think we've just been a standout industry partner for the government. So it's been a lot of work, a lot of hard work, but we'll get to celebrate here soon enough.
Yeah, heck yeah. So hard work, grit, vision. Those are all elements that I feel like are propelling GeoOwl forward. But let's start the conversation by really building framework around what does it look like to start a business, but start a business that's focused on working with the defense industry, working with the federal government, the DoD. I would imagine you can't file some paperwork, have an LLC, and then walk up to the Pentagon and say, hey, I want to start providing intelligence analysis services to the DoD. Who do I need to talk to? I mean, can you paint a picture for, what that really looks like? Because I would imagine that's probably when you're engaging with stakeholders in the community and in the industry, I would imagine that that's probably a common thread of conversation with people that meet you. They're like, how the hell do you start a business that, for lack of better words, you capitalize on opportunities with the federal government? It seems like a really complicated mechanism. Tell us your story about how you started the business, but then more importantly, how you cross the threshold into engaging with the DoD and providing your services to the federal government.
Right, and you're right in your estimation that the Pentagon doesn't like it when you go there with a business plan and say, I have something for you.
Everybody listen to me. I got a great idea.
Great idea. You recruit friends and they recruit friends. It's going to work out. It is a very tough industry to get started in, and it's even tougher to keep going. So I always say that ideas, everyone has ideas, but execution is everything. This industry is a marathon and not a sprint. So if you're out there looking to start a defense company, work with the Department of Defense, just be wary of that. It's very much a marathon. It's not something that you should take lightly. That is to say that you shouldn't do it, but it's just in my experience, I've definitely learned that things take a lot longer working with the government than you would ever expect. Sometimes things that you thought would take weeks, take years, but high risk, high reward. So, how do you get started in working with the Department of Defense? Well, hopefully you have some type of experience working that the Department of Defense needs, right? Whether that's working with technology or working with military equipment or
construction.
Even
maybe.
Construction, absolutely. Anything that the DoD needs to acquire. So hopefully you have something to bring to the table, something to offer. There are various public information sources that you can use to look for opportunities. But I always say talk to people first. Go to the customer first. Find a customer. If you have something that you're good at, articulate that, put it in writing. Even better, add some graphics to it so people can visualize what you do.
Right.
And present that throughout the community. Find someone that needs what you're selling, and start there, because it's like I said, it's a marathon, and one thing always leads to another. That's a good. It's a simple thought, but the things you do today compile and add up into what can ultimately be great in the future. So, in this industry, it's all about making connections and relationships. Once you have those relationships established, once you have a customer in mind, actually putting your heart and soul into doing the work and being a reputable person and being honest and, not pushing yourself to the max where, the actual what you're providing is degraded. Having a good reputation to provide for a customer feeds off into other customers and helps you grow. So, in this space specifically, you want to look for public sources of information. There's things like beta.sam.gov that they post opportunities that you can look at. There's all sorts of information on the internet about starting a business and working with the federal government and all the different websites you have to register for and things like that. But all of that is for naught if you don't have a customer. So go find a customer first. Find somebody that needs what you're offering. And once you have that, it's easier to build those logical gaps of, okay, how do I overcome this next hurdle? How do I get through this next gate? Like, how do I get to the next point eventually to where I can earn an income? So it's incredibly tough to get started, and it's incredibly tough to stop, because once you're rolling, you're rolling. Do you
feel like your time in active service, were you previewed to, were you able to witness the functionality and the dynamics of how a defense contractor worked when you were in the military, and that helped you navigate once you got outside the wire of the DoD?
Yeah, so it definitely helped to be exposed, so I understood what a contractor was and how and what role they played in our operations. They were always, for us, when I was served in the Army, the contractor was always that subject matter expert. Like, you go to them, they knew the equipment, they knew the process. So when they knew.
So you were working with contractors directly when you were in active duty.
Yeah, so it definitely helped to understand what their role was in the space. So absolutely. Now, moving into it, there's a lot more that goes into it than just what you see in day-to-day military operations. There's all these things that go into acquisitions, and that's a whole other can of worms we could talk about. The acquisition process is absolutely insane. But for anyone that wants to start a company, I say do it, but find that, that first step is find the customer. Second step is start to take the next logical step to satisfying the needs of that customer. We're solving a problem for that customer.
Right. So I have a question, and hopefully you can answer it. So I'm looking at my experiences from being in the military, coupled with my knowledge that I've gained post-service. DoD is a very complex and, in my eyes, ambiguous organization. I feel like where I would envision one person being, there's five, and so on and so forth. Who is your actual consumer? I know that you got a bunch of GOL team assets working with SOCOM. You've spoken in past episodes about certain agencies that you work with, but who is the decision maker that says, me as a leader in the DoD or the federal government, I'm making a decision, we're pulling the trigger to do business with GOL? Who are those people, and what does that interaction look like?
Yeah, so there's very clear guidelines and rules from the federal government of how to do business with the federal government. they really do their best to try and make their acquisitions competitive and fair. In fact, the defense industry heavily relies on the federal acquisition regulations. I could tell you about that. You'll fall asleep instantly. But there are a large set of guidelines of how the federal government should go about procuring work to be fair and competitive, right? So they have to do things like market research and have so many qualified bidders and things like that. Put things in their solicitation that are equal and not too lopsided towards one company or another.
Right.
So there's rules in place as to how the government should proceed with making their acquisitions. Now, once they go through that process of following those regulations, typically the cycle goes like this. They have some sort of need, right? They identify it might be a year out, might be 2 years out, might be 3 years out, for whatever, depending on the size of that need. They identify the requirement, and then they start to develop that requirement internally on the government side. And then at some point they say, okay, well, we really need contractors for this, and or we need to purchase materials for this, or whatever it is that they're doing. So they'll issue typically some sort of request for information. So it's what they call a sources sought out to industry, and it's posted typically in a public place like beta.sam.gov or through the Intelligence Community Acquisition Resource Center.
Now, is this the same as like an RFP?
Not quite. We're not quite at the RFP stage yet. Okay. So the request for information is really just a survey that the government is doing to say, who could do this work? Like, here's some guidelines on what we're looking to procure. Who could do this work? Could a small business do this work? They have thresholds they have to meet and goals they have to meet for small businesses. They have goals they have to meet for service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses like GeoAL. They have thresholds for women-owned small businesses, hub zone businesses, 8A businesses, that sort of thing. So they have to do research to determine what the best avenue of approach is. So they'll issue the sources sought. They'll have a number of responders. And based on those responses, they'll use that data to say, okay, well, we didn't get enough small business responses, so we have to put this out as what they call a full and open competition. Full and open just means anybody can bid on it. Typically, those favor large defense contractors because their past performance, what they've done, their book of work, is a lot more relevant to what's being solicited. So they have different options. They can do full and open. They can do what's called set-asides for small businesses. They have all sorts of different acquisition strategies. They can use what's called other transaction authority, OTAs. They have a bunch of different options that they can use to acquire the work. It just depends on what they need. But anyways, once they get the sources sought, they do the market survey, then they determine their acquisition strategy. And at some point, they might hold an industry day, which just invites people to come on out and talk with the government and hear from the government on what they're looking for, what they're looking to acquire. And those are typically pretty popular. Sometimes they'll hold one-on-one sessions where you can sit down and talk with them about what their needs are. Once those are done, and those aren't always held, but once those industry days are done, months go by. Like I said, everything takes forever. This whole process is really long.
Right.
Maybe they'll send you a draft request for proposal. Now, one of the things that the government doesn't understand about industry contractors is how much time and money and people go into responding to their requests. We spend a lot of money and a lot of time dissecting the requirements word for word, understanding what they're looking for, trying to make assertions as to what they're really getting at when they ask certain questions. So we put a lot of energy into that, and this is the case for most contractors. We spend a lot of money on what's called B&P dollars, or bid and proposal dollars, towards looking at these sorts of things. So if we're lucky enough to get a draft, that's typically the point where we'll actually start to form a proposal response, and that proposal has to be compliant to all the requirements. That means everything that they put in there. If they say you need to wear blue socks, we have to say we are going to wear blue socks.
So it'll literally get down to details, that nuance.
Yeah, not typically blue socks.
Well,
but in the requirement, it'll spell out. It'll say things like the contractor shall show up to work every day from 9 to 5. Okay, well then in our response we have to be compliant. We have to say we'll show up from 9 to 5. If you're not compliant, they just throw your proposal out right away. So all that money you just spent on bid and proposal is right out the window. So the first thing with responding is to always be compliant. So we get that first, and then they'll score you. Typically, they have different rating metrics. These are typically put out in the requirements of how well you responded technically to what they're asking for. How well your management scored. And they always say that proposals aren't read, they're evaluated. Well, of course they're read, but that's how I've always heard that terminology. But they evaluate it. They look for strengths and weaknesses in your offering, and they try to score it on an objective basis. So if you get to the point where, a draft RFP's out, we're building our proposal, and then eventually, they'll have some question and answer sessions, and eventually you get to a final RFP, and that's when we're full blown. Like by that point, we should almost be done with our proposal. And we're turning small dogs into puppies, as we say. We're really just refining what our solution is, and making sure we hit all those high marks, and providing the best possible answer to the government, and really pulling in our knowledge and expertise across the company, and across our team of companies, because we always work in teams. So at that stage, the RFP will have a date, and you send in your proposal and wish for the best. Now what I just mentioned sometimes takes years to get to that point. Let's say you win. All right. This is where it gets fun, because now
what?
Now your competitors can protest, right? So you just spent years and a lot of money on this stuff, and then you get down to sending in this proposal you spent all your time and money and effort and energy on, and a lot goes into it, and then somebody says, that wasn't fair. So they protest. So they put in a protest. There's a few mechanisms you can put in a protest through the Government Accountability Office, or through things like the Small Business Administration, if you don't think that the company's a small business. And that delays the process even further. So that can push it back. I've seen them last a couple of years, protests. So I talked about it being a marathon. That's one of the reasons. We have things we started bidding on 2-3 years ago that we're just now coming to fruition or waiting on. So at the end of the day, what happens is the government sits down. They have a team of people that look at it, they rate it, they evaluate your proposal. And at the end of the day, there's just one person that is considered the source selection authority that looks at the feedback from those evaluators. And then typically they'll make a recommendation to select the company that the evaluators rate the highest, right? That's typically the case. But the source selection authority, if you have two vendors that are pretty close, right? And let's say their prices are close and their technical solutions are close. Well, now the source selection authority, government person, has to make a decision, right? So they have to spell out why they make the decision. They say, well, this technical factor here, we valued that a little bit more than the price over here. So they have to spell that out clearly. So once you get down to that source selection authority, an award is made, and like I said, maybe you get protested, maybe you don't, but it's a long process to get into doing the work. So,
dude, I felt like I just ran a marathon. I'll be honest. Yeah,
and it's definitely a marathon, and you'll feel like that every time you submit one of these things, or you go through this whole process I just mentioned, and the government says, "Oh, we just canceled this." At the last minute, after you spent all your time and money,
right? So all that was in vain.
They could just cancel it,
right?
So there's that too. So
do you have dedicated team members that? I mean, that is their sole focus. I mean,
that's their job. Yeah.
You indicated that Jim Moore is like a god in the designing proposals.
Well, I would never say that about Jim. I wouldn't let that get to his head, but he's good. And, he's helped our team develop the capability to respond to a bunch of different solicitations. So, if we send in enough of them, we do win. And we get through that process eventually. And we finally get to that stage. So there's a lot of hard work that goes into even just getting, one award or things like that. So,
I'll be honest, you completely turned off any aspirations I have to.
Yeah, do not start a defense contracting company unless you are crazy. You're not going to sleep.
I'm crazy, just not in the right way. You're crazy in the right way.
Right. Yeah. You're straight jacket crazy, which might bode well in some instances. You might be all right. So
in past episodes, you've talked about who your actual customer is and what that dynamic looks like. The federal government is incredibly complicated to understand from the outside. You've shared that SOCOM and the NGA, I believe, are two of your primary consumers.
Right.
What does it look like from when you establish a relationship with them on a given project or what have you? And what does that interaction look like once the bid has been won for GOL? What does that look like with how you work with these organizations?
Yeah. So you mentioned NGA. So NGA is the largest agency that no one's ever heard of. It's the
I've never heard of it.
It's the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency.
Why is it not the NGIA?
That's a good question. They hyphenate geospatial intelligence. That's how they get away with it. That's
they
how
have
they
the
get
Latin
away.
approach. The Perez Vasquez appeal.
This industry is riddled with acronyms inside of it. But NGA, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the largest agency that no one's ever heard of, is responsible for our national geospatial strategy. So what the heck does that mean? I mean, they're responsible for putting together the pieces of the pie to understand the world, essentially. That's their slogan is know the earth, show the way, understand the world. And that's literally what they aim to do. Now, our interactions with them, once we get past the acquisitions process. Now, the acquisitions people are unlikely to be the same people that we're operating day to day with. So it's, you kind of get handed off to from the acquisitions people into the.
But when they do put out a bid for proposal,
yes,
they have a proposal department at the NGA that you're working with.
Yeah. Yeah, they have contracting officers that are trained in doing acquisitions, hopefully. They have some great ones, actually, at NGA. Once you go through that process and we're working with GOL at the end of the day, then we shift into operations, and that's where we really shine. So the bid and proposal stuff is great. But actual executing the work is what we're the best at. We know how to do this stuff. We live, sleep, eat, and breathe geospatial intelligence. So when we actually get to do the work, when we finally get through that process, we revel at the notion of getting down to into the weeds and actually supplying that intelligence. So that interaction on a day-to-day basis. We're working with government people, like let's say the NGA, for instance. They use what's called bands to differentiate the people in their organization. So depending on what echelon we're working on, it could be a band 3 person we're supporting, or band 4, band 5 person or department. And we're working with them as in a partnership, right? We're there to say, okay, we just went through this acquisition stuff. There was a bunch of stuff on paper, and that stuff on paper is great. Tell me about what you know in your experience. How do we make sure we're successful here in this endeavor? So those engagements and interactions at the end of the day, when it's time to do the work, are the most important ones. The stuff with the acquisition is great, and you can't get anywhere without without acquisitions, and you certainly can't get anywhere with bad acquisitions. But when it comes down to actually doing the work, oftentimes what the government requests over here might not be what the technical person on the ground actually needs.
I can only imagine the miscommunication.
So now, they could say, look, I sent in a document 2 years ago on that. I don't, where it's a different person there that was originally reviewing things. I mean, this
is not what we asked for.
It's chaos. But typically there's some really good people and they're dynamic, so they're able to adapt and come up with updated requirements on what their actual mission and focus is. So NGA, for instance, has different offices. They focus on different things. Some of their offices focus on maritime activity, right? Shipping and things like that. Some of them focus on aeronautical. Some of them focus on different parts of the world, right? Middle East, Asia, whatnot. So depending on who we're supporting, we're really gathering those requirements from them and getting an update right up front. Like, okay, all right, we just went through that whole process. Let's get down to where are we at today. How can we make sure that we're successful here? And then we get started, we get rolling. We go through a transition period. Typically, if there's a contractor in place, we transition what we call desired incumbents. So, we go to the government and say, hey, who are the people you really like? We're going to make sure we hire them and prioritize them. And if they're like, I don't know about Sally, she's skeptical.
Sally.
As I say, we have a great employee named Sally. I'm so sorry, Sally. You're fantastic.
Pick another name.
Don't worry about it. But so we work with them, identify the people they want to keep, and walk through. We have a systemic process for walking through transitions to make sure that we check the box on all the administrative, security, and operational needs. I think we're probably one of the companies in industry that can handle transitions better. Just because of our experience, and we get that at that time when you're entering a new endeavor, it's super critical that you have good people and smart people on the ground that can make decisions quickly, and they're empowered to do so. So that's why we focus on empowering our managers at the lowest possible echelon to make good, quick, fast decisions that give our customers exactly what they need when they need it. Especially during those transition periods, those are always, we call it 24/7 management ops. We're rocking and rolling. We're here to support. And my role in those instances is really just to work for our team members to make sure they have everything humanly possible that they need, so that they can support, our awesome customers like NGA.
If you had to choose, I don't want to get into a hole, but between the NGA and SOCOM, do you have a preferred client partnership? Who do you prefer working with, or do you even have a preference?
Well, there's great people at both organizations. So and oftentimes there's people that have worked at both. There's because it's there's different intelligence needs across SOCOM and then across NGA, and we work with the Army as well, and what we call just regular Army as well in their intelligence space. So oftentimes there's a lot of people moving between the different organizations and agencies. But man, supporting the warfighter at the end of the day, helping the special operations units do some cool shit. I don't see how you top that. And providing them with good intelligence, and seeing a successful operation go off without a hitch, and playing a small role in that, I don't think you can top that. I love supporting NGA. NGA is a fantastic agency, but if I have to pick and choose, I'm going to pick the warfighter every day. And ultimately, that's what the NGA is there to do as well. And as an agency, their job is to actually help the warfighter on the ground as well, to help them understand what's happening on on the earth, right? Help them understand the location they're in, and help them access the intelligence, the geospatial intelligence that they need to make those decisions, those tactical decisions on the ground. So, yeah, it's a toss-up. There's some cool stuff to be said about each organization, and I could probably go on for days about either, but special ops, those guys are the best.
Well, because I mean, at that point,
you can be NGA, by the way, in supporting special ops. Yes, I know it gets funky, but NGA is the organization that's responsible for providing the information to DoD about how to proceed with their
so
activities.
They're basically, I mean, in a very high altitude sense, the NGA is similar to the GOL, except they're a federal asset and you guys are a contractor in a way.
Sure. Yeah. No. That's a fair way of putting it. They have a lot of different missions at NGA. Don't get me wrong; they're a massive organization. They work across the government. They work with DHS. They work with, Department of Agriculture, BLM. I mean, you name it. But in terms of being the geospatial experts for the government, yes, we are the geospatial experts for the government as contractors. They're the geospatial experts for the government as government. So yeah, I mean, very, very similar.
Right. Dude, that's awesome. I love it. Do you have any parting words for this episode? We're closing up on the end of the hour.
End of the hour here. No, nothing. It's just been a lot of fun chatting with you, and hopefully somebody got some good knowledge and information about what I'm blabbering on about.
I'm more excited talking about this content almost than I am on our radio show. I mean,
yeah.
I don't
know what your radio show's about, but you guys need to step it up.
It's not about intelligence. I'll tell you that. It's not about intelligence.
Give me a call. I'll talk about intelligence. No problem.
Well, hey,
anytime.
Ladies and gentlemen, when you get an opportunity, go to GOL.com. Check out the unique, niched services that the organization brings to our federal government and supporting our operational forces around the world. Nick's got a lot on his plate. He's got a wedding closing in on him with all the changes that go with that. So I appreciate you taking time to come into the studio to have another episode. Until next time, God bless America. This is Geo Owl Podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Visit geowl.com and learn how GeoOwl implements next-generation intelligence advancement technologies to aid the Department of Defense with precision and expertise analysis. GeoOwl.
The new era of intelligence.